to get into some beautiful things right now. You know you rocking with Lex. Oh my gosh. So happy summer solstice. That is what this video is going to be about. Everybody watching this, make sure y'all pick up a copy of Astrosthetics. And in a few days, I'm going to release the Astrosthetics calendar on YouTube. So everybody on here, y'all could pre-order it and get in tune. So make sure y'all get Astrosthetics. And if you have it, make sure you go to page 180. All right? Because this is going to pretty much be what we're going to be going into right now. All right? So everybody, we are on the summer solstice right now. The sun is in the beautiful sign of Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal sign, right? We have cardinal signs, fixed signs, and we have mutable signs. The cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. These signs come at the beginning of the season, right? Now, in a larger context, we talking about Cancer essentially being the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, the fourth sign. So this would mean that Cancer begins at 90 degrees. So when we're dealing with the cardinal signs, right, we're dealing with the sensitive angles. The cardinal signs are more so like angles. When you're dealing with the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, um, Libra, and Capricorn, I want y'all to think like angular. And these points on the chart are very, very powerful because essentially this is like where the energy is. I don't want to say fixed because I know that sounds like I'm trying to play off the fixed signs, but it's really that first, fourth, seventh, and the 10th. These are the most powerful houses in any chart, right? Now, of course, if you have like a stellium in like a second house or your third house, then you know your chart's going to be different. But it's really, look, think about it. The first sign, the first house, this is the house that has your rising sign, right? Then the fourth house has your IC, your Imam Coeli. Then the seventh house has your descendant opposite of the ascendant. And then your 10th house has the midheaven, which is the 10th house, right? So these houses are very, very powerful. Now, when we're talking about, even when people talk about your big three, one of your big three is the is an angular house, right? Your ascendant. Your first house is one of the angular houses, the being the first house. I just want to make this clear so that we can understand the importance of these angular houses. Now, with Aries being the first one, this is where we have the vernal equinox, right? The vernal equinox. And when you guys think of that, I want you guys to think zero, right? Because the vernal equinox represents 0 degrees. This is where the sun enters the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is something that we also get into way more in tune in astrosthetics. And y'all, make sure y'all pick this up because this is for real what we about to be reading out of right now. All right. So look, when you go on page 180, we have this beautiful wheel here, right? And when you look at this wheel, it kind of looks like a natal chart. Now, when you're looking at your natal chart, you're essentially looking at the ecliptic, and this is what we will call the wheel. You get what I'm saying? Now, look, when we got this right here, this is showing you these sensitive angles on the chart, being the first house, fourth house, seventh house, 10th house, etc. Right? Now, the solstice and the equinox happens on these angular points on the chart, right? Remember, when we're talking about Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, right? These signs are associated with changing the seasons, but that's kind of really the mutable signs because they're gonna morph the season into the fixed signs. But it's like, in a way, the angular signs or the cardinal signs they're in a way like the governors of the season, right? I know that might sound a bit weird and be a bit controversial, but they're the ones that kind of initiate the whole thing. Like Aries is the first sign. You get what I'm saying? So look, when we're dealing with Cancer, right? The sun is going. Notice that we have the Tropic of Cancer, we have the Tropic of Capricorn, we have the equator, we have the Antarctic Circle, and we have the Arctic Circle, right? Each of these five regions are the major great circles on the earth when we're speaking about it from like a kind of geodesic point of view, when we think about it geocentrically. But notice that the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, right? And the equator would be 0, right? And then remember, when we deal with this thing celestially, we're like, okay, Aries, right? And this is it right here, right? This is Aries right here. And when you get a beautiful copy of Astrosthetics, it'll be 0. You get what I'm saying? So when y'all look at this thing in particular, 0 is springtime. Then when we hit that angle, which would be a square, we get 90 degrees. Now we are in Cancer. We go from the equinox. Now we're at the beautiful solstice, right? And you can legit see it here, but this is important. And this is why Cancer is so protective, right? In a way, Cancer is the home, right? Cancer is like the divine matriarch. And make sure y'all tap in with the Twitter, because y'all, we have some beautiful things on the Twitter. Like, I'm gonna tell y'all right now, we gonna keep seeing animals do very interesting things. And when you go on my Twitter, y'all are gonna see that, like, we put it on there. Animals, pay attention to your pets. Pay attention to what your animals are doing, because they're gonna be the ones that's gonna be just going on another level right now, right? But now when we're dealing with Cancer, we're dealing with the matriarchal nurturing element, right? And as the sun goes into this part, the sun reaches its, in a way, its zenith, right? And the zenith of the sun, this is what we will call the summer solstice. And in the northern hemisphere, the days are at its longest. Now, in the southern hemisphere, they're getting the least amount of daylight, and the sun is at a opposition to the Tropic of Capricorn, right? So when we deal with the etymology of what a tropic is, and I'm not talking about Tropicana. I'm not talking about Tropicana. I'm talking about the tropics. Remember, the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn. These things represents turning points. When you look up the etymology of tropics, it means a turning point, right? And this is really a oscillation. This oscillation right here is why we would say that the days are getting longer. And this is why the sun dominates the summertime. The sun really begins to kind of fall off the hill, and to a degree, as right, kind of like right now, right? Because the sun is at its highest point, and then from there the sun, it declines in a in a very interesting way, for a lack of a better words. But that quote unquote declination of the sun, right? This is what would, this shift in angular momentum would cause a shift in in our seasons, from our geocentric point of view, right? Hey yo, everybody, make sure y'all pick up a copy of Astrosthetics, all right? So y'all, check this out. When we're looking at the beautiful zodiac sign, right? Now, because in a way this is kind of like layered in a way, and there's things like gradients on this, and we also have the zodiacal degrees as well. But These first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses on the ecliptic and from an astronomical point of view, it's important to know that this is why the cardinal signs are so important, because in a way they kind of like rule the chart, and they kind of like rule all the other signs. Now, when we're talking about the tropics, notice that the Tropic of Cancer, Capricorn and Cancer, these are the signs that, regardless of, in a way, whatever we say, these signs are tied directly into our northern and southern perspective. When we're looking at a natal chart, when you look at your fourth house, and we mention all of this in astrosthetics, right? When you're looking at your fourth house, we mentioned that the fourth house is actually the most northern part of the chart. And it's important for y'all to know that north doesn't necessarily mean directly ahead. That's not what north means. North, in a way, means straight ahead. And this is, in a way, right, to the North Pole. Now, when we're talking about the North Pole, this is where everything is oriented north toward Polaris. And we also have a southern pole star called Sigma Octantis, which is the governor of the South Pole. And not necessarily saying that Polaris and Sigma Octantis are opposites, because they're not all the way. But when we're looking at the South Pole, Sigma Octantis is the star closest that would represent the South Pole, right? Now, when we're dealing with these elements right here and the tropics, the sun doesn't necessarily go all the way to 90 degrees. The the maximum height of the sun, and make sure, remember, we're talking about the north and south here, is the maximum height that it will go is in the Tropic of Cancer, right? And then from there, remember, there will be a declination downward, and then when the sun is at the very bottom, the sun is at Capricorn, right? But now, when we're talking about the fixed signs and the mutable signs and the cardinal signs, think about this. The fixed signs are situated within the middle of the seasons. Before the fixed signs, the signs are just beginning, and afterward, the signs are changing. So, because of this in astrosthetics, right, I find that the fixed signs are very stable. And look, the first fixed sign is Taurus, literally the sign of stability. But notice that the Tropic of Capricorn and Cancer, from a geocentric point of view, are the only two signs that are, in a way, situated on our geodesic plane, right? Now, this is something that, regardless of what we say, this is what's responsible for the shift in our seasons, as well as the axial tilt of the Earth. Now, in the northern hemisphere, we experience and we see these things in the natural physics of space, where we experience daylight the longest, right? And then as we go toward, now think about 6 months from now. 6 months from now, the sun would be in the beautiful sign. Y'all make sure y'all pick up a copy of Astrosthetics, because y'all know we love this right here. Like, I'm kicking it with y'all right now, sourcing it up so crazy. Sourcing it up so crazy. Yeah, baby. It's so gravy, all right? So think about 6 months from now. The sun is in a beautiful sign of Capricorn, and the sun is at its lowest peak. Then the sun, it rises again. But before that, the sun is in Sagittarius, the immutable sign. But remember, 6 months from now, we're going to be in the winter solstice. But 3 signs before that, we're going to go into the fall season. This is where the sun goes into Libra, which is another cardinal sign. Then after that, the sun goes into Capricorn, which is the last cardinal sign. And this is where we get winter, as the sun makes its descent into the the abyss of space, and then the sun rises again as we go into the new year. And this is why it doesn't matter like which way you want to flip the year. Um the calendar that we use here, we've always have used a similar amount of variables, whether it be 360 days, 365 days. We've always used like these numbers. And you know, it's very interesting to note that from an astronomical point of view, when the sun, when we say the astronomical new year is really in spring, this can also be from a point of commerce and civility, right? So this is also why in astrosthetics we mention that it's important to note that when astronomy and astrology, when these things were kind of first grasped, I believe that it was from a farming perspective, right? People was farming and they notice patterns. They notice, wow, when this star rises, we get an abundance of crops, and then we're able to farm and society can thrive for another year. You get what I'm saying? And that's why in astrosthetics, we love to pay attention to like the more realistic, in a way, I guess you could say creative approaches to these beautiful things that we love, right? So now the sun, when we're talking about these equinoxes and the solstice, right? um the solstice, they take place in Gemini and Sagittarius, and we have the vernal equinox that we were just speaking about, which would be represented as Aries or as the first point of Aries. And then we have the opposite, which would be 6 months from that. We have fall or the autumnal equinox. Now when we have the autumnal equinox and the vernal equinox, this is when we have an equal amount of daylight and darkness, right? Now when we're dealing with this factor here, as we go from the fall season to the winter season in the northern hemisphere, we would be experiencing more darkness, and then the southern hemisphere would be experiencing more sunlight. But now you see that we're in the northern hemisphere and we're experiencing the most amount of daylight as the sun is in the Tropic of Cancer. All right. And yeah, we going in with it like just with the flow right now. Like, you know, of course, you know, astrosthetics is shining, right? But this is why like we love these mathematical principles, because you know, like we could just kick it to you right now, but best believe we saucing it up on another level right now. All right. And you know you rocking with the best on top of that. You know it's Slex. So make sure you rock with that. You got me, Scrap? You got it back? You got me, Jack. All right, cool. Copy that. All right. So y'all, let's continue with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presentation right here. Now, y'all see when we're speaking about these shifts from these angular points, this once again, and when your natal chart speaking, you will call this my first house or my fourth house or my seventh house or my 10th house. Now, you know that the sun, look, the sun is exalted in the first house in Aries. The moon is exalted in the fourth house in, no, the moon is exalted in Taurus. The moon rules the fourth house. Excuse me. The moon rules the fourth house, right? But then the sun experiences like its fall in the seventh house, right? And then you know, like it's important. And then look, the moon experiences its detriment in Capricorn because the moon rules the fourth house. You get what I'm saying? So it's like when you look at the sun and moon being like the most powerful planets on the chart, it's important to note that they gain power and in a way they kind of lose power in these angular houses that we were speaking about, right? And then when you look at Mars, and Venus, right? Mars and Venus, is Mars is exalted in Capricorn, but Venus rules the seventh house, and Venus is in a way debilitated in the first house, right? So when you look at these things and you begin to like notice these patterns, you see why these transits with the angular houses are so important. But this is really these transits with Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, because these energies right here are going to initiate new seasons. So, from a certain perspective, thousands of years ago, or maybe 3,000, 4,000 years ago, the solstice, it took place in Cancer. But remember that when we're dealing with these things like these, the precession factor, this happens in a retrograde motion. So we would go from Cancer to Gemini, right? It's in a way we would go in a semi-sextile, in the opposite way, right? Because remember, we're dealing with the precession factor, so we're gonna go a sign backward. At one point, the solstice, it took place in Gemini, and we know this because we can use technology and we can use software, and things like, because we science, with the event of science, we're able to actually see and calculate and realistically see that at one point this solstice happened in the sign ahead, right? But now the solstice, it happens in a mutable sign. All right. So these things are just beautiful to know, but it's important to understand that the sky is always shifting. So it's like when you say we're in the age of Aquarius, well then why is it that we don't experience the equinox in per se Taurus anymore? You get what I'm saying? And it's just, once again, important. It's important to note, because think about it. At one point, we it was a celebration of the bull and the ox. We was in the age of Taurus. Then we went into the age of Aries, right? Then we went into the age of Pisces, which we're vibing in right now. And y'all know that we also introduced that to the conversation so beautifully. But what I'm saying is that if you were gonna say that we celebrate in the solstice in a mutable sign, then it's like, let's keep it there, because we're not, like, we gotta move all of them. You can't say that we in the age of Aquarius with the vernal equinox, but then celebrate the solstice in a mutable sign. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I know that mathematically it just doesn't work that way. So I'm always down to know what kind of science y'all out there doing. And because like, I love to build on these things, but it's like, y'all, all of these things are related. The equinox and the solstitial points, we would call them the equinoctial points and the solstitial points. Remember, let's do a quick recap. The equinoctial point would be Aries and Libra. This is where we have a balance, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness. And then we have the solstitial points, which are the highest and lowest points, right? So when we're talking about the Tropic of Cancer, this is the highest tropic. And what is a tropic? A tropic means turning point. But geocentrically speaking, they're important because they deal with oscillation. And this oscillation is responsible for our summer, winter, fall, and our spring, right? So now when the sun is in the Tropic of Cancer at its highest, then it begins to decline. Then we go into the season of autumn. We get a balance, right? The scales, we get a balance of sunlight and moonlight, or darkness. And then when we go into the winter season, we get the least amount of sunlight, and then the sun evolves as we go into the spring season, where we get another equinox. All right, so y'all, it's important to know all of these things. If you're rocking with me, make sure you go on to easycomplex.com and pick up a copy of Astrosthetics. All right, they said he know He know the book like the back of his hand. Ooh wee. Nah, yeah, I'm just playing. I'm just playing, y'all. Y'all know I love vibing out with y'all. It feel great. And you know, we just went all the way in. All right. If you love this video and enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and send it, share it, and you know, let people know. All right. And we want to give a big shout out to everybody that's just being innovative, being creative. All right. Y'all see how we vibing out. We respecting what everyone is doing. All right. Whatever you do out there, whatever makes you feel great and uplifted, keep doing you. All right. Have fun and be yourself and just keep a loving vibe and thrive and just be the best at whatever you're doing and just keep being your beautiful self. And you know, these things may sound a bit cliche, but when you practice them and just have fun, you just gonna realize how beautiful they are. All right. And y'all, you look, y'all remember I'm a Pisces, man. All right. I love keeping it straight, serene and nice always. All right. So y'all enjoy. Go on to easycomplex.com and get right with me, right with me. All right. And stay blissful and peaceful. And I'll see y'all in another beautiful time. All right. Yeah. Enjoy, y'all.